Okay, good morning again, and welcome to the War and Peace Studies, the Congress 2025. And it's wonderful to have you joining us around the world. And my name is Nazım Altıntaş. I'm delighted to moderate this first session, War and Politics in the 21st Century. As we all know, war and politics have always been deeply connected. Two forces that constantly shape one another. But in the 21st century, that connection looks a bit different. I must say, it's very different. Conflicts today plays out not only on the physical battlefield, even in outer space. Political objective drives these new forms of confrontation. And understanding that link is what today's session is about. We have five distinguished speakers and who will guide us through the different dimension of this the theme. The first speaker, Talha Çağman, he will revisit Russian-Ukrainian war through the lens of the Clausewitz'in, reminding us that every war, no matter how modern, still has political the roots. Next, retired Colonel Cumhur Erentürk, he will trace how the battlefield itself has evolved throughout the history, showing how its shape and size reflect the politics behind it. And then Dr. Cavit Zafar will unpack the idea of hybrid warfare, how state and non-state actors use a mix of military, economic, and information tools to gain the power. After that, Professor İnci Sökmen Alaca will take us literally about the battlefield, exploring the role of the space-based technologies like satellites in modern the conflicts. And finally, Dr. Faisal Bana will share geopolitical the lessons from Turkey's operations in Syria and what those the experience might mean for other nations facing complex security the challenges. Together, these talks will help us think about the question: how does politics continue to shape the way wars are fought, and what lessons can we take forward to the future of the peace and security? Each presenter will have around 10 minutes, and after everyone has spoken, we will have time for a short question and answer the period. Please keep an eye on your time so we can enjoy every perspective. Once again, thank you. Welcome to the first session. And I think the speaker will be the Talha Çağman. Talha, you're the youngest one, I think, among us. Now, floor is yours. Okay, Talha, we're ready to listen to you.
Thank you, sir. As the first presenter and a member of the planning committee, I welcome you all too. My presentation will be about the Clausewitz'in ideas and their relevance in the 21st century, with a focus on the Russia-Ukraine war and whether Clausewitz retains his relevance in modern warfare. I have no reason to doubt that everyone here have heard about Clausewitz, but I believe a brief introduction is customary. Karl von Clausewitz was a Prussian general and a military theorist on the 19th century. He started writing his famous book on war, Vom Krieg, while he was the director of the Kriegsakademie, the military academy of Prussia, but died before finishing it, and we have to thank his wife, Mary, who compiled his work and finalized it. But the question is why Clausewitz is important. This is primarily due to his approach to war. First of all, In his view, war is not a collection of battles or tactics, but a complex social and political phenomenon, a living interaction between stages, armies, and people. He sought to understand the nature of war itself rather than prescribing fixed rules on how to fight it. For Clausewitz, war was not an isolated act of violence, but part of a broader continuum of human affairs, an instrument of political purpose. Clausewitz framed it as a rational tool of policy and governed by the same logic and constraints that shape diplomacy and governance. Secondly, he was a man of the Enlightenment era, which led him to use scientific terminology on his works, such as center of mass, friction, and to express his ideas. And his key idea, the most famous idea of his, is maybe the friction concept that differentiates actual war from the war on paper. The condition that makes even the simplest things more difficult. He names this concept friction. The examples of friction include weather, terrain, misinformation, morale, and so on. So as I mentioned, Clausewitz viewed war not as an isolated act, but as a part of a larger political process. This brings us to one of his most famous quotes, his definition of war itself, actually. The war is a continuation of politics by other means. In other words, the battlefield is not a separate form of diplomacy or governance, it's simply another instrument. The quote itself and the underlying wisdom apply to both sides of the Russian-Ukraine war, as the conflict itself is a culmination point of years-long political struggles, such as the 2013 Euromaidan protest and Ukraine's decision to move closer to the Western world. Now that we understand the idea that the war is a fundamentally political aspect, let's start by looking at the Russian side, how Moscow's political objectives shaped its military campaign. Russia's aim in this war was to reflect its long-standing geopolitical ambitions. The Kremlin's pre-war demands centered on three key points: installing a pro-Russian government in Kiev, ensuring Ukraine's permanent neutrality, and forcing NATO to halt its expansion eastward. In Clausewitz'in terms, these are political objectives, not purely military ones. The invasion of Ukraine became a continuation of Russia's foreign policy through violent instruments, aimed at revising the post-colonial world order. On the Ukrainian side, the things are different. If Russia's war aims to reflect and attempt to revise the geopolitical order, Ukraine's response embodies the opposite, the defense of the existing international order itself and its own right to self-determination. For Ukraine, this war is fundamentally existential. It is not about projection of power, but about survival as a sovereign state. Moving on deeper into the Clausewitz'in theory, into the interplay of passion, chance, and reason, Clausewitz claims that the war is based on a paradoxical trinity of what he describes as passion, chance, and reason. Passion means that there must be an enmity, a hatred inherent in people beforehand, before the war. Chance is linked with friction, we've talked before, and emphasized by any uncertainty, any friction that the commander can turn into an opportunity by using their talents. And the reason symbolizes the government policies and it dictates the direction, limits, and forms of the war will take. The greatest example of passion, the people in this conflict, is the Ukrainian side. From first day of the invasion, they showed solidarity through civil resistance, volunteering, and unifying national identity. The chief reason that the war continued on to this day is because of valiant effort of Ukrainians. Ukraine has a simple but difficult aim of survival and sovereignty. So they were successful in sending the message that this struggle for democracy and international order. However, in time, Ukraine broadened its aims to not only defend its borders, but also reclaim territory that was lost in 2014. This is also in line with the Clausewitz'in understanding of defensive and offensive warfare, as he said that defense is usually easier, thus more preferable, but it's passive, so you can't win the war with defense alone. So you have to go on an offensive, and this is what precisely the Ukrainians did with the counteroffensive. On the Russian side, Russia faced with much more friction, which caused it to shift gears mid-conflict. The expectation and the government reason was that Russia will be able to capture Kiev and change the regime in one fell swoop under the umbrella of a special military operation. However, logistic troubles such as stalling Russian convoys, failure in battle plans such as not being able to capture key points like Antonov Airport, increased the friction, causing Russians to change their policy to a prolonged attritional struggle, pulling back from certain areas and focusing on others. On the issue of the limited and absolute war, of Clausewitz divides it, names absolute war as an ideal concept, a theory in which every resource is mobilized for unrestrained violence and annihilation of the other side. This level of war is not attainable in reality, as wars are limited in collective political objectives, social issues, moral concerns, and friction. Therefore, distinction serves as a gauge, as a benchmark on the course of the war. It is trending toward escalation to total war, or is it being limited? Is it being de-escalated? On the Russian and Ukrainian case, initially the conflict was limited by Russia as a special military operation, and the aim was regime change, not total conquest. Due to the aforementioned effects, though, war escalated towards absolute war. It increased its intensity. Yet still there are constraints such as nuclear deterrence and international pressure, such as economic warfare that keeps the war limited. For Ukraine, national survival is a prime example of total war. However, it also remains limited for Ukraine too because of lack of capacity to destroy Russians outright and limits imposed by the Western allies. NATO can be considered a third party in this gauge too. On one hand, it provides support to Ukraine while avoiding confrontation with Russia, signaling a conscious political aim to restraint and de-escalation and limitation. And for my last point, I want to talk about the validity of Clausewitz in the 21st century. It is hard for a writer of any kind to breach centuries and reach audiences living in completely different set of circumstances to theirs. And I argue that Clausewitz managed to achieve this and protect his relevancy by choosing not to focus on army movements, formation, and tactics, but instead focusing on the fundamentals of war and politics, the nature of war, to say. This deep understanding of constants enabled his ideas to be implemented on new theories such as information warfare, cyber warfare, and economic sanctions. As an example, mutually assured destruction theory is a good example of war as a policy, also being the biggest abstraction for absolute war. Similarly, modern forms of warfare such as cyber, economic, and energy fulfill the criterion of Clausewitz as they are instruments that serve as political purpose and compel the enemy to do our will. The Russia-Ukrainian war confirms that Clausewitz's insights are as relevant today as they were centuries ago. War still functions as a political instrument. Its nature continues to be defined by passion, chance, and reason. But truly determines success, as Clausewitz reminds us, is the alignment between political aims and military means. When these two diverge, strategy collapses, a lesson viable on both sides of this conflict. Modern technology changed how wars are fought, drones, cyber attacks, and information campaigns, but it hasn't changed why they are fought. The essence of war remains deeply political and profoundly human. And that is why, even in the 21st century, Clausewitz continues to guide our understanding of war, strategy, and limits of power. Thank you for listening to me. This is my presentation.
Thank you, Talha. Thank you very much indeed. That was really, the good, the starting, the speech. We were looking at, the current, the conflict with a perspective of, the old historical, the theory, Clausewitz'in theory. My understanding is that theory is still relevant, especially when we look at, the Russian perspective. Of course, the security is one objective for the Russians, but the political of this, the current situation is much more important for the Russians than the other, the objectives. I think at the end, if we have time, we will discuss, this subject again. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you, sir.
Now, we will look at, the second subject, the dimensional changes of the battlefield within the historical, the context. Our second, speaker is retired Colonel Cumhur Erentik. I believe he has deep, the knowledge on the historical, the perspective, and we are ready to listen him. Colonel Erentik, now floor is yours.
Sir, dear attendees, let me first do it in full screen. This is the outline of my presentation. War is not only a standalone and ordinary concept or definition. Since Tuz's Art of War, it has gradually evolved in response to changes in the nature and the conduct of war. As seen on the timeline, I mean the taxonomic development, all of the terms related to war have originated either from concepts before the war or developed during a specific event in the conflict. I would like to draw attention the definition of war declared or conveyed by Atatürk is also impressive. He says a continuous struggle with the ambiguous forces. In a simplified functional model, war can be expressed as a function of multiple variables. These are historical background, causes, interest, desired end state, time, area, etc., which are derived from the taxonomy below. Besides that, various forms of warfare may occur during the same war, as seen in Turkish War of Independence. War of attrition, annihilation, decisive, total war. So we can see many forms of warfare in a complete war. When we go through analyze the battlefields, it can be noticed that most of the wars and battles have been conducted within 6 and 7 kilometer squares until the second half of the century. On the left side, you can see it's called strategy of single point. Then later, employment of distributed maneuver, simultaneous and successive operations became popular in the Napoleonic area. After the Napoleonic Wars, we can mention about the beginning of operational level and quasi-operational art. In this slide, we can see the early classification of battle, campaign, and war by Quincy Wright. The distinction is mainly on the duration of conflict, daily, seasonal, and a couple of years. I would like to also draw attention that the possibility of the last and the first pitched battles occurred in the same area, in Afyon. The red one is the last one, as we know it, Dumlupınar, and the blue stars show the first battlefield in Anatolia. There are a few proposals for that purpose, but we can say that all the battles in that area, the first and the last battlefields near Afyon region. Early examples of successive operations or battles and advanced approach via two separate axes can also be seen in ancient times. For example, Granicus is also occurred in 2 or 3 kilometers area. Wars can be grouped as generations as well. The expansion of battlefield and emergence of variational level of wars start the first generation of war. In second generation, we can say that the characteristics of linear battlefield, such as rifled musket, machine gun, indirect fire, and maneuver with 2 axes are dominant in this era. When we continue with the battlefield dimensions and concept, we notice that 1904 and 5 Russia-Japanese War impact on the World War I in Generation 2 battles and wars. In addition to the idea of the operational level of war, mass warfare, battle of annihilation, trench war, and prolonged battles are specific terms of this period.
Sir, excuse me.
Ye-
We cannot
yes, sir.
see the slides.
You can't see it. Which one, sir?
We can see your slides.
We cannot see any of your slides.
Any of you?
Could you please share it? Yes, now we can see it.
Yeah.
So I go again the first slide, if you like, and until now, I will
I
change.
think it would be better. It would be better to go through the
14.
first slide in a short view, so we can
Okay.
better
So
understand.
in this slide, we can see the different forms of terms related to war. In that part, we may think about the definition of war by Atatürk and the taxonomy of war. And here, I would like to put it in a form of mathematical functions, which are interest, desired entities, time, all of derived from the taxonomy of war. This slide was showing that during a complete war, we may see various forms of warfare, such as annihilation war, total war, resistance, guerrilla warfare. And this is the beginning of the, let's say, the area, dimension area of wars, starting from the first ages. It occurred 6 or 7 kilometers until the 18th century. During the Napoleonic era, it's changed a little bit. And then after the Napoleonic era, we can mention about the operational art. This slide shows the battle campaign and war, the first or the early classification of wars, such as combat period, campaign period, and warfare, mainly day, seasonal, and 4 or 5 years period. In that slide, I drew attention that the first battlefield in Anatolia occurred in 1003 before BC, and the last one in Dumlupınar in the same area. It occurred in the same area. We can see the early examples of successive operations in also area of Anatolia. The expansion of battlefield in accordance with the generation of forces. Now I can continue with that if you like. I said the 1904 and 5 Russia-Japanese War had an impact on World War I. Now I will show the different battlefields in the First World War. The Eastern Anatolia front was 800 kilometers. It's larger than the Western front. The other battlefields, Battle of Somme, Marne, and Verdun, are shown on the slide. 225 and 70 kilometers up to 40 kilometers fronts. When we come to the Anatolia, again, the Battle of Sarıkamış is also 70 to 90 kilometers area. In Gallipoli, in Çanakkale, let's say 40 kilometers shore. And all the battles occurred in the several beaches between hills and the shore. During the First World War, we can see some examples of the successive operations. And in Second World War, the dimensions of the battlefield become larger than the World War I. Battle of Kursk and Battle of Ardennes almost are the same size. "20 to 30 kilometers depth in Normandy beachhead reached 80, 90 kilometers depth in 100 kilometers front. After World War II, more than 150 conflicts occurred also in Cold War based on 7 reasons. Although some types of war, such as proxy war, hybrid operations became popular, the battlefields were not as large as in World War II area, but wars and conflicts are prolonged. In Korean War, line of contact was 250 kilometers. Battle of Gunuri took place 40 miles depth in the region. Other Cold War period battles are shown on screen. And the last conventional war in Cold War era was the Gulf War. It's about 600 kilometers front. In 21st century wars, extended battlefield turned into expanded battlefield in accordance with the multi-domain operations concept. In this respect, armed conflict is a part of also continuum of competition. When we look at the overall generations of war, it's shown on the screen, from the first one to the last one, 4. In addition to that, in addition to the high inflict wars, The countries faced 225 uprising, resistance, or large-scale terrorist actions within their own borders.
Okay, so
In the
I think
NATO structure also, we
you
can
sum
see
up
the
it?
anlaşıldı komutanım. The distances increased more than 3 times. So as a conclusion, we can say that during the first ages until today, the linear battlefields became larger. After World War II, it decreased to Cold War area. This concludes my briefing.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
And we exceed a bit, the time. The slides are quite, valuable. I think, those who are interested on this subject, they should check, your slides again when the book is published. Thanks again for the information you gave us.
Thanks, sir.
Are we still on the online? Okay. So now we jump on, the third speaker, Mr. Javed Zafer. Did I pronounce correctly? Is he online? Does he hear me?
Yeah. Unutmuşuz şeyi paylaşmayı. Konuş. Unutmuşum ya.
Javed Zafer. So I think it's interrupted. Efendim hadi bilgi. Benden mi? Yani ben de duymuyorum sonu. Yep.
Sesiniz kapalıydı ondan.
Açtım. Tamam. I think we couldn't hear, our third speaker. Let's continue with our, the fourth speaker, Professor İnci Sökmen, the Alaca. Actually, in the beginning of, the Congress, Dr. Bilgin gave us some information about, the weaponization of, space, but she will look at, a different perspective. I think harnessing, the power of, space in the Ukrainian conflict, strategic and operational, the lessons. Now we are ready to listen, the İnci Sökmen Alaca. I can't see anybody. Do you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, sir.
Yeah, but the speaker is on. I don't know. Our fourth speaker is she on?
Yes, I'm here and I'm opening my presentation. Sorry.
Okay, yeah, good to see you. I think we had some interruption. Now we're glad to have you. And as I said, the Dr. Warlick, gave some information about the weaponization of the space. But now you're going to talk about more specific, the Ukrainian, the conflict on this subject. We're ready to listen to you. Okay, so the floor is yours.
Okay, I will share my screen. Everybody can see my screen? My
Yes, I
presentation
see,
is
but
on.
I don't know the others.
Okay. Probably everyone see my presentation. My topic is harnessing the power of space in the Ukraine conflict, strategic and operational distance. Before the Ukraine 2022 before the conflict, Ukraine was not regarded as a space power, but it had deep aerospace expertise and latent potential from the Soviet area. During the Soviet era, Ukraine was on one of the key centers of the rocket and space engineering. But after the independence, Ukraine retained this industrial base and well-trained aerospace workforce, giving it technological heritage than full operational power. However, the country lacked a sovereign launch site, stable funding, and an independent satellite constellation, which limited its strategic autonomy in the space. But and also military space capabilities, Ukraine did not have independent military space program or significant satellite reconnaissance or navigation assets. It's relied largely on international and commercial providers for imagery, communications, and navigations. In the military terms, Ukraine was space dependent, not space empowered. Therefore, during when the conflict began, Ukraine did not use so much space environment. Only NATO provided or private space actors like SpaceX and the other actors provided all that kind of information. And also during the space-based capabilities transformed Ukraine's military effectiveness during the conflict, enabling a network information dominant force. Especially for that reasons, in my presentation, I am looking at strategic and operational lessons related to space capabilities. What does it mean strategic? What does it mean strategic meaning? Strategic lessons concern actually the big picture, long-term implications of the space capabilities on national policy, deterrence, alliances, and the balance of the power. These insights shape national defense strategies and overall direction and outcomes of the conflicts. In the Ukraine conflict, strategic lessons from the space could include space as a strategic enabler, resilience and deterrence. From the resilience and deterrence is the key, one of the key important strategic area, and also being allied and commercial integration is critical, and also information superiority. Space is also provide information superiority from the theater of the war, and also redefining deterrence and sovereignty after the usage of the space capabilities, and also so strategic lessons are about how space power changes national and alliance level strategy and the broader conduct of modern warfare. If we quickly look at the some section, commercial space after the Ukraine conflict would become as a strategic actor. In here, we will be giving the reference to the SpaceX, Starlink, and Maxar as one of the space companies. These companies emerge as a decisive strategic actors in the Ukraine. And also Ukraine maintained critical communication through the private satellite network, and also during the conflict, space data become a tool for strategic communication and global influence, and also it shifted power dynamics away from solely state-run space programs, and also commercial assets become strategic enablers of the national defense. If we take into the consideration of these lessons, what are the recommendations for other countries? Formalize partnerships with private space firms through the security agreements, establish frameworks for rapid civilian to military satellite tasking, and encourage redundant constellations to prevent single points of the failure. And also transparency and the global information power. Space completely provide so valuable data during the conflict to the Ukraine side. In here, Maxer, Planet Labs, and Black Sea imaginary revealed Russian troop movements, and also space data provide documented alleged war crimes, strengthening international legitimacy of the Ukraine, and also effectively countered Russian disinformation campaigns as using space data. Therefore, space data turned to be strategic information power status, and also played critical role in information warfare and diplomacy, enhanced coordination between military and diplomatic efforts. From that lesson, for the other countries, we should take into the consideration, first develop OSINT coordination centers, and also to train the diplomatic personnel in satellite-derived evidence. And also the other one, aliens and space infrastructure resilience. At the beginning of my presentation, I say that Ukraine was not a space power. Therefore, how they become during the conflict more powerful in the space? Of course, the NATO assistance, because NATO provides so much space data and space resonance systems. Therefore, it's any kind of the aliens, military aliens during that area are so valuable. Therefore, Turkey is maybe more advantageous for that reasons, because both NATO data can be used during any kind of the conflict with other adversary countries. In here, his intelligence sharing among the NATO and commercial providers are so valuable, and also unified strategic responses is also so valuable. Expanded multinational data sharing agreements and standardized data formats and protocols. Even if you are not alone space power, but after any kind of the member of the political or military alliance organization, it will be so powerful for you, especially in the space area. And also, we can say that Russia-Ukraine conflict demonstrated that vulnerabilities in space infrastructure can have far-reaching strategic consequences, impacting both civilian and military operations. Nations must prioritize building redundant and cyber-resilient space architectures to maintain credible deterrence. When we come to the operation lessons side, operation lessons are more practical, campaign-level insights about how space assess sport-specific military operations. In here, what we talk about, first, real-time intelligence, especially these data is coming from the commercial imaginary, enable targeting and situational awareness, and also resilient communications, Starlink maintenance command despite Russian jamming, and also precision warfare, GSP data integration, improved targeting accuracy, and also countermeasures against the jamming and cyber attacks, especially during the electronic warfare resilience. Space, we see that space assets provided tactical advantages through enhanced C4ICR capabilities. And also, when we continue in the operation side, space-enabled battlefield communication are so critically important. In here, Starlink terminals maintaining connectivity under the intense Russian jamming, and also space-based network ensuring continuous command and coordinations. In here, enabling decentralized command structures in the operational impact and facilitated faster decision-making on front lines. From that lessons to recommendation to other countries, develop multi-band anti-jamming terminals and train units in satellite network management. When we come to the targeting and precision fires, space-enabled precision strike chain, especially space-based ACR, and also target acquisitions and precision strike. Strategic impact in here, space-based ACR dramatically improve accuracy and efficiency of strikes, enabling Ukraine to conduct precision operations against high-value targets deep behind enemy lines. When we come to the drone operations and battlefield awareness, again we will see space-based navigation and imagery become critical enablers for drone operations and battlefield awareness, highlighting the need for resilient space system, and alternative navigation capabilities. When we come to the conclusion, as you see from that table, is a strategic and operational lessons comparisons. In each side is so much valuable for all the other countries, especially already preparing for the Russia in the part of the Europe, and also for the Turkey, why especially for the Turkey, how the space should be critically important, especially now in the NATO multi-domain warfare strategy is completely main strategy. Therefore, if you continue the multi-domain warfare strategy, you should need cyber and space capabilities for each members of the NATO. This is my presentations. The last, if you have any questions, I will answer at the end of all the speeches.
Thank you very much indeed, Professor.
Probably it's not the same
It's very,
presentation,
very
actually.
Sorry? Sorry?
It's not coming from me.
I cannot understand. There's an interface behind you, I think. Where's the sound come from? I couldn't understand.
I say that the
Okay.
other
The
presentation
microphone.
is not the same.
Okay, someone has opened
The
the
other
voice, so that's why we
presentation?
moved the microphone. It's all fixed right now. You can continue.
Mr. Altuntaş, I didn't.
you-
Yes,
You didn't hear me?
yes, I am hearing
Did
you.
Did you hear? Okay. So what was the last point you said?
I say that I think the other issue related to space presentation is not the same. It's we are look at the different points of that issue.
Of course, that's totally different. Thank you for your information. And then I'm getting older. Space is a new issue for me. But as my understanding, space asset is becoming the most valuable strategic, the weapon for the whole, the armies and countries. And
Yes,
other,
you
the lesson I took, the distinction between civilian and the military, the systems in the space, is getting blurred, and they can be converted easily for the military, the purposes. But the problem is still over there. Who's going to control, the space? It's going to be trash, lots of, the satellites are evolving around us, but no controlling authority established yet. I think that's going to be another problem for the future. Thanks again for your information. Let's
For
continue with the other, the speaker. Sorry. Go ahead.
For the strategic governance issues, so much are discussing in the UN. However, currently there are polarization in the space between China, Russia, and also Europe and United States. But and also especially the militarization of the space so critical. But there's no so much valuable effort on that issue, the militarization of the space. Every country, especially US, are more active strategy towards the demilitarization of the space than the others.
Okay, yes, you're right. So we will see in the future who is the strongest. We'll put the rules. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks again.
All right.
Our next speaker, Dr. Faisal Bana. Can we hear Dr. Faisal Bana? Is he there?
Yes. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. Good to hear you. And then you're going to talk about geopolitical, the lessons from the Turkey's strategic success in Syria and lessons for the
Yes, sir.
India's defense and security, the policies from this, the operation. So we're ready to listen
Yes,
to
sir.
you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, good afternoon all. So, as regarding with my topic, and I was able to listen some of the topics, and I was connecting with the broader idea of the conference, and I was connecting with the different technologies and ideas which introduced across the world in different war tactics. As far as India is concerned, I was analyzing the developments, the political developments which was happening in this Syria, and the role of Turkey in Syria ever since the conflict started in Syria in 2011. So I was.
Excuse me, Dr. Faisal. Dr. Faisal, excuse me.
Yes, sir.
Are
Yes,
you
sir.
sharing some? Are you sharing some slides? We cannot see.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I haven't seen your slides yet.
1 second, sir. Is it visible, sir?
Not yet. Yes, I see you, but not slides.
Is it visible, sir?
Yes, they are visible. Thank you.
Yes, sir. So, as far as connecting with the developments in Syria and Turkish involvement, I was trying to connect India and its neighboring countries, how Turkey was successful in Syria, and its both economic and strategic development, and the development which is regarding the Republic of Turkey. And when I was making the background reading, the literature review regarding the particular topic, I was going through the theory of strategic depth theory and the doctrine of strategic depth by Hamad Al-Thawb, is an academician in international relations and former politician, currently the politician of Turkey, and his idea of strategic depth, how Turkey directly or indirectly influenced this geopolitical strategy, the powerful position of Turkey in the region, West Asian region particularly. So the Turkey used all its geographical and geopolitical position with regard to Syria and its neighboring countries, particularly to eliminating, even though it's not completely eliminating the Kurdish threat according to the state of Turkey is concerned, and how it was able to overthrow the power center in Damascus with the help of its allies in northern regions of Syria. And here I would like to first, half of my discussion, I would like to discuss these developments. Then I would like to connect how India can implement and it can take certain strategies with regards to the development with Turkey and Syria. Actually, Turkey has followed a balanced. Sir, am I audible?
Yes. Okay.
Am I audible? Yes, sir. So Turkey has adopted an idea of balanced diplomacy with regard to Russia, NATO, and all the power allies when it is connected with Syria. It never tried to provoke, it never tried to retaliate in a vehement manner with regard to any powers in the region. And it was making a balanced diplomatic position in Syria. And Turkey always maintained an independent actions, rather making its regional and local pinpointing to different strategies. It was never provoking any power centers. It had its own autonomous and its own independent action in the region. And Turkey, just like what we see in the international politics right now, it was always acting as a power broker in the region as well as in the West Asia. And even though it had a very good relationship with the Assad regime in the early stage, gradually it was deteriorating, and that has disappeared, and Turkey had to go and align with the rebel groups in the region. After 2024, what happened in Syria, and with the help of HTS, Turkey was able to become the regional power holder. That's what I'm trying to connect with the help by using its intelligence strength and military capabilities. It was helping the rebel groups, which all the international countries were blaming and categorized HTS as a terror organization. The same countries now showing on the red carpet to the head of the state of Syria right now. So these, in international politics, what we see that the things change. As an Indian concept, we have a concept of Kaudilya's concept. Is the ancient Indian political philosopher Kaudilya. He says there is no permanent enemy in international politics. Today's friend will be tomorrow's enemy. Tomorrow's enemy will be today's friend. Like that's what we are seeing right now. And the HTS leadership has become the power center. Turkey used all its intelligence and diplomatic as well as technical maneuver in the region. Turkey took back its all the region which was making the problems as far as the Turkey is concerned. And this Kurdish containment, Turkey, as we know, Turkey always have been going through different territorial question from its eastern front, particularly YPG. So here one question comes, when Syrian National Army right now merging with the SDF, the question comes whether Turkey will support this movement, because they already made an agreement right now. Last week they were successful in implementing this agreement as well. So Turkey's next question will be whether they're going to this agreement or not. It still standing as a question regarding this Kurdish question is concerned for Turkey. And Turkey was able to use all its proxy networks in the region, all the proxy network in a healthy and strategic manner, rather than making a massacre over the region. Though there are certain human rights violations happening, that's a bombardment in the civilian region, international organizations have made a lot of remarks on that. Here, Turkey was making as a power broker in the region in between Russia and Iran. It had a lot of challenges of dominance. Turkey's assertive posture directly challenged Iranian and Russian fears of influence in Syria. It had to make a balance in the region because Syria was the battleground of all the international powers. And it had to exploit the constraint, Russia's resource limitation from the Ukraine, and this Russia had to both balance the Ukrainian war and the war in the Syria, which was ongoing. So the in between, it was a positive approach for Turkey. There was a kind of vacuum in the region for implementing Turkey, and Turkey evolved as a unavoidable mediator and power broker in the region, and now Turkey has emerged as a regional power. We cannot avoid Turkey as a mediator and regional power even in international politics. Here, as introduction I gave, how Turkey was successful in the region by using its military maneuver and diplomatic strategies. Here, my main point of discussion, what are the lessons for India from Turkey? It was a miraculous success for Turkey to bring back and a kind of peace in the region and political stability in the region after a decade of 1.5 decade of violence and massacre in the region. Here, India has to make a lot of lessons. That's what I was making a comparative analysis. What India failed in Sri Lanka and India kind of doing the activities in Pakistan. This has to be compared, this analysis has to be compared because in 1980s, Indian government miserably failed to tackle the question, Tamil question in Sri Lanka, and we had sent peacemaking troops. Though it was acting as a peacemaking troop, gradually it changed from its goal, and Sri Lankan government, they themselves asked to leave the country. So it was a bad experience. Still, it is there. How Turkey was getting the consent of the native people and to overthrow certain regime which is autocratic. Such a consent from the people has to be built, rather sending just hardcore equipments into the region. A military operation, just before military operation, we have to go through people's consent, people's authority is first, we need, first of all. That we actually failed in the state of Sri Lanka. And as far as India is concerned, India has to make a balanced relationship with Russia, China, and US to become the regional power. These countries are unavoidable. We cannot remove these countries from the international political power. And these days there is conflict going with the United States of America regarding the trade engagement as concerned. And these concerns always India has faced criticism that it's pro-Russian, it is going towards Russian alignment, always pro-Russian. So there should be a diplomatic balance between India and Russia. India-Russia relation as well as India-America, United States of America relation. And Turkey's effective proxy groups in Syria, just like the proxy group, rather just supporting the proxy groups in Pakistan's not best frontiers. And Pakistan, according to India, the conflict region in the Pakistan, that is Pakistan occupied Kashmir, we call it POK, and Pakistan call it Azad Kashmir. So this area, India is having part of Pashtun provinces. India is having a lot of influence, and these rebel groups in the Pashtun and province, nowadays we can see a lot of fights happening in the region. India is just supplying its intelligence support. That part India is successful, but there's bloodshed. India has to be concerned that part rather than intelligent sharing, but Indian government is having people's concern from that particular region rather than but in this side, India's concern, India's strategy is like Pakistan military and all capabilities will be concentrated in this military, in these armed groups, on these rebel groups, so that this India's border, Pakistani militaries, and their focus may diverge. That's what India's plan. But those are how much it is successful. India has to make a critical analysis with this. But though this Pakistani government, of course, India right now, India's enemy country, Pakistan being an enemy country to India, India has to overlook all these things. People's consent matter, all these things. But India is somewhat successful in this northern western part of Pakistan. Yes, India has to make a depth and prioritize a line of actual control and LOC, India's border with China, India's border with Pakistan. But the critical question actually comes, we need India to make people's consent in the Indian part of Kashmir. Government of India is making lot of people-centric policies, pro-people policy in the state of Kashmir, Jammu and Kashmir, India's part of Kashmir. And but the still question comes, India actually removed the statehood of Jammu and Kashmir. Now it's a centrally monitored, centrally authorized union. India has to reinstate their state position, or else still it will be a question of consent from the people. Without the consent of the people, the regional influence is not possible. That's what I'm trying to connect. And India's connecting with the connectivity project. India recently brought a connectivity project, India, Middle East and Europe Economic Corridor. In this corridor, India planning to bypass Pakistan, and India able to use Middle East and Israel, from Israel, then again connecting to Europe. Such an economic corridor India is planning. That development works ongoing and agreements have been already signed. Parallel to this, India's investment in Chabahar port in Iran, and its aspiration and projects in the Central Asia, India trying to connect to Central Asia through Iran by passing Pakistan, by making a good alliance with Afghanistan.
Dr. Faisal, can you sum up a bit? The time is running.
Yes, sir. As connecting both the countries, India has to try to connect all the strategic influence. What are the strategic influence and intelligence influence Turkey used in Syria? These capabilities India can use both in Sri Lanka and Pakistan, not in a suppressive way, by making the consent of the people, making the strategic development, and by using its intelligence and maneuver, India can develop just like Syria, what Turkish government have done, and it can make step, because Indian Tamils are India. We have Tamil community, more than 7 crores of Tamil ethnicities there in India, and in particular in Indian state of Tamil Nadu and Puducherry. So in Sri Lanka also we have huge Tamil population. So this connection has to be rebuilt. Through making this connection, India can become the region. India is a regional power, and it's one among the multi-power in the world, and it can become more, utilize its strategies by using this. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Faisal. It was really nice to hear your voice and your, the view from a distance, and then you provide us very valuable, the information from an Indian perspective. And if we are talking about, the peace, I think we should understand, all the problems, and we should have, we shouldn't forget everyone has a different paradigm. So to look at, the different angle is the key on these, the subjects. As you mentioned, the Syria, don't forget, the Syria was an area for the proxy war. In the proxies, they can stay in positions, very rapidly. And as you point out, clearly multipolar engagement is key on these, the operations. Thanks again for providing this valuable, the information. I think, do we still have time to have, the fourth speaker, the Javed Zafer? Hello? Anybody hears me?
I think
Yes,
he
we can
couldn't
hear
be
you.
able to reach us because he's from Iran. And in these days, there might be some restriction for the internet or something else.
That means we can conclude this session. Is that right? Can we conclude this session?
Yes, but we have some 10 minutes, around 10 minutes for the comments or for the opinions of the participants.
Okay,
you can use
a question from the audience.
Yes. You can get the question
We
from
have
the
time
audience
for
or the
questions.
comments or something else.
Okay. Any questions?
I think no question, but I have two questions. Two questions for the presenter. Okay.
Okay.
And first question goes to the first the presentation. I mean the Talha. That was a very fascinating briefing about the current realities of the warfare. That is a good congratulations for this. But I wonder about the Clausewitz, the argument that the offense is stronger than the defense in his idea, you know. Maybe we can remember this from the Clausewitz book. He contends that the defense is the stronger form of the war, even though it serves as a negative object. The reason for these are three area: physical, moral, and psychological. We can understand the physical part of that difficulty, you know, because the attacker has the difficulty to deal with the extended line of communication, all other things, you know. But it is more easier to deal with for the defender. Psychologically also, it is important because the defender is ready for anything in the defensive area, and also he has I mean they have a very good idea or the reason or the cause for the war to defend their territory or the country or the something else, you know. So now I wonder that what happened after the Russia-Ukraine war, you know, which one is stronger form of the warfare? I mean, the Russia attacked, initiate the invasion, but the line of communication extended too much. So the Russia has the difficulty to capture or to reach the end state, his end state, their end state. But also the Ukraine has the difficulty without the assistance from the partner nation. They cannot define their country. So what happened for this? You know, that balance. Is there a balance, or the offensive is stronger still? The Talha. That was the first. For the second question, goes to the second the presentation to the Cumhur. That was also fascinating.
Let's get the answer for the first question, Oktay.
Yeah, okay.
Oktay,
Good.
can we have
Yes.
the answer for the first question?
Repeat?
Talha.
Talha, yes.
I can answer it if you, okay. Yes,
Can
as
we
you
have the
said,
first answer for the first question?
yes. Yes, Clausewitzin says that defense is the superior form of warfare, and I think this still holds up in the modern world because the people are still same. So the moral aspect of it, how the people fight their war, is their psychology of saving their homeland is a big part of it, the passion aspect. But on the other aspect of it, another important aspect is that the political international relations have changed. So, as one of the prior presentations said, wars are not fought between two states anymore. There's always a third party. There's always the international relations, international arena observing the war, affecting it, and the trend in 21st century is the defensive wars. Especially the Western ideology that shapes the international arena is against offensive wars. So that in the Ukraine example, there was a big help and coming to Ukraine because Ukraine was defending itself. So this is why I think defense is still superior because, you know, you are not there. You are more likely to get help if you are fighting a defensive war. Okay, of course, the circumstances might change it, but the moral thing to do seems to be the defense. I hope that answers it.
Okay. I think in a sense, of course, you know, the Clausewitz was looking at, you know, the problem, mainly, you know, the military power maybe, and on the battlefield, military decisive, you know, the result. But nowadays, the tools for the war has changed a lot. I think that's the reason it's quite difficult to define what the offensive and defensive operation means, especially in Ukraine, you know, the Russia war. And some, you know, the main essence, you know, is still can be used, you know, for, you know, Clausewitz, you know, the view, but there are some new, you know, the views on, you know, the current, you know, the conflicts. I think National Defense University should look at this subject quite deeply, because this is a big question. You ask, you know, the right one, you know, the Oktay, and then we can continue with your second question.
Yes, for the second question, that the extension of or change in the battlefields, yeah, that is important also, of course, over the time, over the history, and the battlefield dimension change, you know. But currently, Cumhur, we included the domains of the warfare to the battlefield, saying that the land, air, sea, and the cyber, and lastly the space, you know. What about the cognitive domain, you know? I mean, when we say the cyber, sometimes we use the cognition or the cognitive, but I think it doesn't cover. I mean, the cyber doesn't cover the cognitive domain, you know. So, in my understanding, that is another domain of the battlefield. So we should include it, and we should think about it. We should consider further. What do you think?
Cumhur?
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Are you over there?
Yeah, I'm here, sir. Yes,
Yeah.
I
Okay.
take note, sir. I take note
Okay,
about
did you hear the question?
Yes, I think this might be useful to
Did you hear
include.
the question, Oktay?
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Yes.
he understood that. Okay.
Yes, the inclusion of cognitive domain to the warfare.
Yes.
Is that correct, sir?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the cognitive domain is about not the execution, but the planning. It's related to mostly the planning phase of the warfare. And during the implementation period of that, psychological operations and information operations can be accepted as part of this cognitive domain, in my opinion.
Okay. Ali Bilgin, I think
Okay.
Ali Bilgin Varlık.
Another question?
Yok. Ali Bilgin Varlık, I think he can answer this question. Maybe he may have a different idea, because he drafted a book on the information warfare. Lastly, it is ready. The book is ready, you know, to be published somewhere. But I am not sure that yes, Ali Bilgin Varlık is connected.
Excuse me, sir. Am I audible, sir?
Ali Bilgin, did you get the question?
I'm connected, but I missed the point.
Yes,
As
we
far
can
as
see
I'm
you. Did you hear the
concerned,
question?
I have heard the question, but I didn't visualize, you know, what it
Okay. The question was the dimension of the war can be cognitive dimension.
Could you please repeat it again?
Yes, I can repeat my question.
Okay, Oktay, can you repeat the
Yes,
question?
Ali, as you know, the domains of the warfare now includes the land, sea, air, cyber, and the space, you know. What about the cognitive domain? I am saying that the cyber doesn't cover all aspects of the cognition, you know, or the information warfare, influence operation, perception management, all other things, psychological operation. So we need to define a new domain instead of just keeping the cyber domain, you know, to cover the whole area.
Yeah,
That should be the cognitive domain.
But I would say that if we are to add another domain to warfare, it could be psychological domain, because cyber doesn't cover all, and all the other land, air, and space has some limitations and some distinctive areas. But today's war mainly goes on, as you have noted, main perception of success. And this brings us to the importance of information operation. If we are to, once again, I would like to, I do not want to repeat myself, but in a very short sense, but I would say that the next domain could be the psychological domain, including the national and international general idea, who is the winner and who is the loser.
Okay. I think the one more thing we should add on the subject. Perceived threat, perceived the security, and when you talk about the cognitive, we should think about those, take to consider the perceptions, because many things can be changed, depends on the perceptions, and then the one of the objective of the conflicts to influence the perception the others. I saw that book recently, The War with 140 the characters. That means they are referring the exciting platform. By using those platforms, you can influence the cognitives and the perceptions of the societies. That's another the important domain for the element of the war. Is that the answer? The Oktay, can we continue, or should we stop this one?
Yes, thank you very much. These are my questions for the answers. I think we can conclude and to give the time for another session.
Okay. Thanks again. We had actually the 5 speakers, but we missed one of them. I think you can get his presentation later the online, and that was very useful to look at the political aspect of the warfare in the 21st century, and all the presenters will provide the valuable information to think about the subject. I should thank all of them, and also I thank the others who listen to us, and also I should thank to you and your university for providing this platform. Much. That concludes the first session.
Okay, I think he's our chairperson is disconnected, we can conclude that the session, and we will start the second session in 13:45.
Okay.
But the
Thanks.
webinar is open, of course.